Tonight we're going to discuss how to raise capital. And of course, this is one of my favorite subjects because capital is the lifeline, the blood of any business. Without capital, there's no business. And I take it that we all are in business and we need to have some money, some capital to finance our operation and the growth of our companies. Tonight, I would like for you all to introduce yourself to me so I can know who I'm talking to. That'd be the first item of business. Your name, a quick bio of yourself, company's name, a quick bio of your company's past performance, years in this business. And the reason why this is important in the money game, you never know when you're going to meet someone who can be an investor or a banker who's willing to loan you some money. And you have to be able to present yourself quickly to them and your company. Usually, business people will give you 5 to 10 minutes up front, and they would decide within that 10 minutes if they're going to go forward and ask you for financial statements, your business plan. So it's very important that you be able to do this. And I'm sure that 3 individuals that's online probably can do this quickly.
Absolutely. And I'll call off names of your devices so you don't have to guess about who should do something. All right, so the first one I called out was Hammond Ray.
Hammond Ray?
Yes, my name's Hammond Ray. I'm from Georgia. I started lending in about 1988, but I sold my mortgage company in 2003 and have only dealt with private money. I hadn't used any institutional funds for the last 20 years. And it doesn't matter how big the deal is. I use only trust, very specific trust. But my concern is the food and the supply chain. So when I saw this coming up, I wanted to get more information about how I can help some of the farmers know that they don't always have to go to the bank, that there are private resources out there available to suit their needs in a lot of circumstances. So
Mr. Ray, you said financier of some sort, potentially?
Excuse me?
You said like somebody in finance or looking to assist farmers?
Well, I'm looking to get more background because what I do is I basically do deal structure for businesses and I buy and sell mortgage portfolios. Mm-hmm. And so most of the deals I'm doing are much larger deals, millions of dollars of deals, but I find that a lot of money's parked on the side. So the way my mind works is I structure deals based on matching people. So if I know that there's a group of y'all that are good at what you do farming, whatever that may be, livestock wise or supply wise, then I want to start gathering knowledge of how I might be able to help people in the industry. Because if I can show people to get money out of the bank that's parked earning nothing, and then show them how to structure for mutual beneficial reasons somebody in farming, then that's what I'm here to explore.
Mr. Ray, Mr. Ray, this is John Armstrong again.
Yes, sir.
It's nice to have you to be part of this. I have flipped houses the last 10 years, and I'm very familiar with working with private lenders such as you. And
I want people to understand there's a lot of people confuse hard money and private money. Private money can be your friend that has money sitting in a 401k, but they're scared of Wall Street, but they can lend it to another LLC or something.
Correct.
So, but yeah, I don't do a lot of one-twos anymore. But
Mhm.
again, like I said, I'm just, because of the supply chain, I'm very concerned, and I want to help the smaller farmer and show them that there are other options than just having to go hat in hand to the bank or some government program where they might control all the cards, and it's not a mutual beneficial transaction.
I
If that makes
understand.
sense.
Understand. And welcome to the session with us. Okay.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next person.
Next person I call on, they have their identity as home and the HOME.
Wait. That's not me, is it?
Yeah, that's you. Yeah, your mic is on. We can hear you. Yeah.
You can hear me?
A little bit. It's breaking up a little bit, but go ahead and talk. Yes, sir. Oh, man.
I,
Well, maybe
this
home
is
is
Khalil Hassan in Madison, Virginia.
Brother Khalil, how are you?
I'm good. I'm basically looking for information. I'm kind of like on the aging out end, but I'm willing and wanting to help younger farmers get started or keep and stay in business by providing with some essential information. And as you said, finance is one critical means that they need to get access to. My company, Gardens of Kemet, we've been doing this since 2007, maybe a little bit before that. And as I said, because I'm aging out, I'm kind of diversifying what I do. A little less field work, a little more value-added products. Still growing much of what I do, but using it in a different way to extend the shelf life. I am really hesitant to do loans at this point in time in my life. So I'll kind of make do with what I have. And that has worked for the last decade or so. If I can't get a grant, then I just, I work around that. Kind of improvise and overcome whatever the obstacles are. And again, I say that kind of works okay for me. As I say, mostly what I'm looking for is what kind of information can I get to pass on to other farmers here?
okay. Thank you for being here tonight. Next person.
Next person, Dr. Nicole Nunu.
Hi, my name is Nicole Nunu. I'm a current postdoc in Georgia. So I'm not a farmer. I don't farm necessarily. I don't own a farm, but I'm starting a business, which is a sauce business. I don't know how many of you have heard of jollof rice. There's a lot of wars going on about jollof rice and which country makes the best jollof rice. So while in school, I would usually show up with Ghana jollof rice in my department's potluck. And within a few seconds, everything is gone. And I'm like, okay, this is something is going on here. I'm doing something right. And it's just using my grandmother's recipe to make the sauces. And so as time went on, I started making the sauces in small jars, and then my colleagues would purchase everything. So again, as somebody who is a student, I'm like, okay, this might be a good side business for me to start. So I started kind of doing that. So it's very small scale, extremely small scale. I only sell to my colleagues and then people on campus, but I'm here to listen to all the advice that I can get and to see how I can scale up to make it to make it available to a larger group of people. Yeah, so thank you.
Ms. Nicole, Dr. Nunu, this session is going to help you out quite a bit. It's really designed to help people start up in a vision to create something. You're the ideal person because you're young, starting a young business, and you'll need capital to expand it, to develop it. So this should be good for you tonight. Is there anyone else?
Yep, another person, and I'm gonna. I haven't studied Hebrew in a while, but I want to say that's Hewitt. Goodness. You would cough.
Actually, Yodad.
Yodad. Okay.
Yodad. But my Christian given name is Lejeune.
Lejeune.
Yeah.
I was trying. I was trying to perfect my Hebrew.
All right.
Total, and please introduce yourself.
Very good. Okay, thank you for inviting me. I am a part of this group through Michelle Coleman. I ventured into growing food maybe about 3 years ago. And so I'm at a point now where I'm getting ready to make a life transition. So my primary purpose here today is just knowledge acquisition, that I could, consider what direction I may go in. So there is no business, there is no past performance or years in business, nothing like that. But I'm excited to hear what's going to be said today.
Very good. Anyone else?
That's it for right now, Mr. John.
Okay. Now, many people are in the dark when it comes to money. So let's not be ashamed of that. Together, especially with Mr. Hammond with us tonight, we're going to shed the light the subject matter, and we all should learn something from it. This is one of Susie Altman's favorite saying, that she's here to turn the light on so that we can understand finance better. As an accountant, I like this comment presentation, because it's either right or wrong in the world that I work in. But many times I found that people think that they can play games with the numbers, and but eventually you will be exposed if you don't have good, solid finances. Bankers and people who lend money, they're serious about reviewing you before they join you in giving you any money for your business. So it have to be solid ground reported. Also, in your business and my business, the greatest investment we can make is seeking knowledge. And hopefully tonight we all can gain some knowledge from each other and leave stronger and be better, at least finance people, and understand our business better. Knowledge is kind of funny. Sometimes we think that we know it all, but once we join a club or go to work in a large organization, we may find out new knowledge that strengthens us. So knowledge usually comes from different sources. And it's up to us to each and every day to seek out the different sources. The internet is one of the greatest things that has happened during my career, because if someone presents something to me and I'm not, I need to beef up on it real quick, that night I can go on the internet and read, and tomorrow I come back a much better person. So please always seek more knowledge, even in your profession. Hopefully tonight, after we get finished, we will understand our business financial statements better. We're going to discuss some terminology that bankers and finance people might use, and we may need some help in understanding it. And we won't do this tonight, but you should always have a rough draft of your budget, draft of your latest business financial statement, because again, you're seeking capital, and in order for you to ask for that man's money to invest in you, or woman's money, you need to have some idea of your company finances, and we'll work on that tonight also. Now, in order to build your business, first person you need to work on is self. You as the individual, you will end up signing all the documents to support getting a loan from a bank or a lender. They're going to look to you as the president, the chief financial officer, a person who's responsible inside that company, and they're going to look at you first. For the first few years of your business, matter of fact, my business is currently 12 years old. And if I go to a bank tomorrow and ask for a loan, first thing, well, one of the first things they're going to ask me for is my social security number. And they're going to put it in the machine and they're going to determine if I'm a credible risk to even talk about a business loan. So we individually must work on our own personal finances first. We must make sure we have a strong credit score. Typically in business, you have to be at least in the range above 600. Below that, they may not be interested in moving forward and even consider a business loan. So that credit score is very important, and we need to work on ourselves first. Make sure that we are good candidates to move forward and ask for a business loan. Now, there's some categories that we need to look at within our own selves. We need to list all of our assets. Assets are very important because business people like to use your assets as collateral. So if you don't know where your assets are, it'll be hard to present to a potential lender that you have assets that can at least be considered for collateral. Mr. Wade mentioned 401k. That's an asset. You would list that 401k money in this area where your savings accounts are, all your bank accounts. So always list all of your assets. And of course, unfortunately, we also have to list our liabilities too, which is going to net against that your assets. So if we have $500,000 worth of assets, you add up your home, your cars, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, equipment that has value, then you're going to subtract your liabilities from that, people that you owe money to come up with a net worth. This is what the lenders really want to look at, to see how much you're worth before, again, we move forward and start talking about a business loan. The same presentation will show your monthly income, and we get what we call a debt to income ratio. If these ratios are in line and we have a net worth that's worth discussing, then the lender is ready to move on to the next session. Any questions? Typically, we take some time and create that financial statement for your personal self at this time so that we can talk about it, but we won't take 30 minutes to do that. We'll move on. This is for a class where we spend a couple of days together. This is a very abbreviated session to talk about finance. And again, the personal finance, you have to, again, know where all your debts are, all your assets, all your income, all your loans, mortgages, car notes. have a sheet of paper, if nothing else, that lists each one. List all your debts, all your assets, all your income. Because we need to know this for ourselves, and of course, the person you're talking to that's considered giving you a loan, they have to know this also. Typically, we'll find out when they prove your credit. You should have a budget for what you're going to use the money for. A lender's not going to just give you money without a budget. They want to know what this money going to be used for. If you're going to buy new capital, you should have the information on that new widget, the new machine that you're going to buy. I purchased a tractor myself. I think my tractor was $50,000. And I was a little bit surprised because I had not budgeted for a tractor that expensive. I'm a new farmer, I guess you would say. I've been growing grapes about 3 years, 4 years. Had no idea about the cost of my tractor. I had not done my homework. I walked into the shop, and before I knew it, I was walking out with a $50,000 machine. And I think if I had done my homework, I would probably not purchase a machine that expensive to do the little bit of work that I'm doing with this tractor at this time. Hopefully it'll pan out and I start using it for the future, but I didn't particularly need a tractor that expensive. That's what happens when you don't have the knowledge of what you're doing. So have a budget, have a plan, have an idea of what you can do with your money so you can present yourself better to the banker. Lucky I was not asking for a loan. Plus, lucky for me, I have a good signature. I have a credit score that's pretty close, and probably above 700. And I really didn't need to have the other people's money at that point. So therefore, I was able to purchase without any trouble. They took my social security number. During that session, sitting in the office, they realized that it was dealing with an accredited person. Easy to get put the documents together and sell me my tractor, no problem. But if I was begging for money, asking for money with a poor credit score, I don't think I would have been able to come home with a tractor that day. So, budget process is very important. It tells you study the nomenclature of what you need and what you're going to do with this particular item that you want to finance. And you're able to discuss that with the lender. And a budget is no more than just the estimate of the revenue and expenses of your operation. Usually it's over 12 months. Every year we should know approximately what we're going to earn next year and the approximate related expenses for that 12-month period. Typically, we do our budget the same time as we reported on last year's activity to, of course, Uncle Sam. The IRS need to know how much you made, your write-off, your expenses for that period, 12 months typically. Therefore, why not just take that 12-month period and project this next 12 months, what you're going to do. Unless your operation is going to change dramatically, or unless you're growing, where you have to add percentages to each line item of revenue and the related expenses, your revenue and your expenses is probably going to mirror the last 12 months. But again, when your business is growing, like maybe Nicole, she's new, she's starting, she don't have a 12-month experience yet. Therefore, she have to create the revenue and expenses from scratch. But a person who's been in business for a few years, they have a history, they have a track record. They know what their revenues were from last 12 months. to know what the related expenses are for the same period. Therefore, it's easy to do your next budget for your next 12 months. This is just a sample of a budget sheet. It's kind of busy. I'm gonna go over this in the next few slides. So skip over this one. These are some of the questions you should be asking yourself for the next 12 months. What should go into a budget? Well, that's an easy one. All your line item expenses should go in that budget. Your telephone expenses, utility expenses, insurance expenses, rent, mortgage payments, equipment payments. Every disbursement that you made last year, you need to consider that in your next year's budget. Assets. Right back to, now your assets in this case is for yourself and your company. Of course, you keep us in two different reports, one for your personal, one for your business. But when you're looking for money, you should list all your bank accounts and the balances, list all your savings accounts and the balances. List your real properties. Starting with your home. Usually automobiles don't have much value, but list those also. Never know. Your equipment, like my tractor, list it. For those different businesses that carry inventory, list your inventory. That has a value. And of course, if you have any contracts where people pay you on a regular basis, or you have a earning out into the future, figure out what value that contract have and list it. And then other miscellaneous assets that may not be here. Yes.
I got a question. In terms of both property and contracts, and with, let's say, farmland, what would you assess the value for that to be? Do you use a tax assessment, or would you use what you paid for with to go on market rate per acre in your area? And then on the second part, the other side of the question, like contracts, would government contracts or government grants, let's say for a 3 or 4 or 5 year period, be considered an asset, or is that more of a revenue that's yet to be acquired yet?
Well, let's talk about the real property first. Typically, when you go to terms for a loan, they're going to be an appraisal value, right? Anytime you get a loan against real property, there's going to be a point in time before you go to the closing where they're going to ask for an appraisal. Mm-hmm. That appraisal value is what I would recommend using, because hopefully it'd be positive. It'd be above the price that you paid for the property. It's going to be above your tax assessment value. So again, that appraisal, an appraisal may cost you $500, $600, $700, but still is worth its weight by getting that property appraised, so that you can know full value what you have to use as collateral. Equipment the same way. You have to have that appraised and see if it's in good working order. See what value that's left in it, because some of these things are big money. $100,000 tractor, if you paid it in full, that's a collateralized item. Contracts. Typically, a contract has, like you said, a 3-year value. Most of my contracts, 5-year contracts, but banks and lenders don't mind looking at the next 12 months, but they're not going to really look at anything beyond that, because anything can happen with a contract. You can have poor performance and lose the contract. But if that contract is functioning well, you prove that you've had it for the last 12 months, you can prove that it's performing well as far as making payments to you, 12 months. They may take the risk and look at the next 12 months value of that contract. You can present that contract, the life of the contract, the balance of the contract, of course, and they will probably shape it back to 12 months. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and in terms of you had like grants, which is a different, I guess, reality than a contract that would, for instance, I have numerous grants that may be for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's not necessarily dependent upon performance. I just don't get it. It just showed the income, for instance, but it wouldn't show, I'll stop there because I can't quite formulate my question the way I want to.
Yeah, well, grants again is similar to contracts. You have to perform. There's a performance side of the contract and grants. And again, as long as we are functioning, we're serving the contract, we're doing what we contractually said we would do for the grant, the contract. We can prove payments for the last 12 months. It has a value. In finance, and I shouldn't say it this way, but in finance, you want to present the best picture possible. You want to gross it up as much as you can without any falsehood, of course. Had to be factual, and it's up to the lender to shave it down or to evaluate it and make the adjustments. That's where the third-party appraisers come involved. The lender can look at the contract and see that it's performing by looking at your bank statements. They're going to ask you for 12 months worth of bank statements. You will highlight that this payment for each month that's coming into my bank account. You do the same thing for your grants. That'll be proof that, again, you're servicing these contracts and these grants and you're receiving payments. The lender, potential lender, will look at that activity, and again, they will put a value on it, what they will allow it to stand before they give you a loan. So that's kind of their appraisal, where they appraise it by looking at the performance, looking at your bank statements, and seeing it come into your bank account. Same thing with, again, real property. Pay for the appraisal, and you miss that. Now, of course, we have not talked about those of us who may have gold and silver things of value. I met a client a few years ago, about 10 years ago, and his wife had passed. And I had been working with this client for about 5 years doing his taxes, and also trying to help him get loans for a business that he started. In the process, his wife passed. And in closing down the house and selling the house because he couldn't afford to keep the big house, he had some pictures on the wall that he of course, took off the wall and was ready to pack it up. And it had these little certificates on the back of the pictures. Come find out that these pictures, some of them, I think one of them was like $20,000 value. Most of them were in the range of $5,000 to $10,000 throughout the house. And this guy, mind you, had been walking around broke for years, no money, struggling, had no idea that the wife had purchased these pictures that's, again, hanging on his wall. And he had no idea until it was too late. I mean, really, he had already, been in business 4 or 5 years, needed a loan in the past, but he didn't get a chance to list these pictures because he had to sell them at that point to sell the estate. So you never know where your property is unless you, again, go through your life and look around you, making sure that you have all your assets listed. You don't want to cut yourself short, because that's the bank and the lender's job, is to look at you and to cut it down, because they don't want to take the full risk that contracts will perform beyond 12 months. They don't want to take the risk that you'd be able to sell your farm property or your real estate property for what you appraised it for. You may have to do a fire sale. They don't want to take the chance on your equipment, because you may go out there and tear it up next time you use it. So lenders have to be very careful. They prefer to look at the bank account, the savings, 401k, maybe Nick's contract, but the other properties, they don't want to rely on that too much for futuristic payments. They prefer to rely on you with the high credit score. They prefer to rely on you with your income that come in every month that they can see. These are the things that a lender lacks best. Questions about assets?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat, Mr. Armstrong from Khalil. He asked, does lenders prioritize your personal finances over your business finances, or are they considered equally?
No, lenders, they will consider your ability to pay, especially if you have a new company and they have nothing else to look at but you. That's why you have to be strong. You have to be on paper also. They're gonna look at your debt. If your debt is above 60% of your income, but then they can't use that income. That income is already allocated to another company. You only have 40% of your income coming in. That's what they're gonna look at. Now, that 60-40 may not be bad if your company is a seasoned company. You've been in business beyond 3 years. It's earning a good income. It's paying all its bills. And more so than they're paying your bills, it's throwing off some excess, some net that comes to you, that builds up your value of your corporation. So again, if it's a new company, they're going to look at you 100%. If it's a seasoned company, yeah, then focus is less on you and more on your company at that point. That was Khalil, you said?
Yes, yep. Khalil, so, and
Yeah.
then.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Sister LeJune raised her hand. Sister LeJune.
Yes, I wanted to touch on what you said about the government contracts. When you have grants, at first I thought maybe it would be under contract, but my question is, would the fact that you have applied for and got a grant that was for multiple years, would that carry more weight in your stability or your ability to pay back a loan that you have that? And if you did, and if it does, is grants a separate section, or will it fall under contracts?
It definitely falls under contract. But of course you have to list it in parentheses that it's a grant. Now grants, they're gonna be very careful about a grant, because usually grant don't throw off, well, if you need this loan for a widget or item to perform the grant, then yes, the grant plays a key part. But typically grants does not net enough on the bottom line to really impact the decision. It does help far as showing a revenue stream. If you have a good net, then yes, it would impact. But usually grants are very tight contracts and don't go off as much money, enough to change the decision of a lender. I'm gonna ask Mr. Wade to enter in on that discussion, if he will, as a lender. Mr. Hammond? I guess Mr. Hammond's not with us.
No,
Can
he's
you
coming.
hear me?
When you-
Oh, okay, I can hear you now.
Yeah. I've gotten to where I do things totally different from the banks. And so I'm more interested in a narrative and tell me where you are, what you're trying to accomplish, how do you see it growing, where do you see your cash flow coming from? Yes, I see it coming from, you know, the grants and all that, but let's just say that you need to build something and the narrative makes sense. If I've got somebody that's got a self-directed IRA and they're a younger person, let's just say that they have $25,000 in the account. They can't necessarily use that money right now for retirement. And so a lot of times I might be able to structure a deal to where they don't have any payments for X number of period until we can get something turned around, get a plan in place, start showing a production of whether it be a new field that's being plowed and now you're harvesting. It's almost like the old farm loans to where you get the farm loan, but you pay it back when you harvest the crop.
Yeah,
Similar concept. You take somebody that matches up, that has, you know, a qualified retirement account, some form of that, that aren't necessarily looking for that income for their lifestyle, but they are looking for a return. And those are the type of things that I match up. So I teach people to go in and talking about on the personal finance, you want your name and all your addresses to be one thing. Because what happens is when we fill out applications, we fill it out in 3 or 4 different ways. We do different addresses. And so now the computer with this automated underwriting that most of the banks use and all that, when they start pulling your credit, we don't understand the credit game. So we're not doing what it takes discipline wise and being structured in how we do our forms, how we do our key identifiers and all that. And I'm going to provide some stuff to Mr. Carter that he can disseminate that kind of will be a background to go back in. Because if you take care of your personal information, 80% of that will go over to your corporate or your business finance credit. It's easy to do, but you just have to know that you have to do it this way or you're at a disadvantage to begin with,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
does make sense. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
When you say, Mr. Ray, when you say take care of your personal information, what does that mean? What do you mean by taking care of it? What is that?
Okay. So like if you have M. Carter Jr., Michael with a middle initial Carter Jr., you might have Carter Family Farms, Virginia. You have a P.O. box. Then you have one application that might have a old business account. So when they're looking at so if you ever pull a credit report and look at all your aliases and all your old addresses and all that, you want one name used every time. You want one address used every time. You want to keep all that because the computer can only see data and it's confusing the computer. And so if you go back and you clean up that key, you know, what identifies Michael Carter Jr. from anybody else that might be so-called trying to steal your identity. Mm-hmm. You only do it a very specific way, and you do all your banking accounts that way. You do all your insurance that way. You do so everything matches up and you get credit, good or bad, for that one entity.
Mhm.
Is that, do you understand? You
Yes, sir.
understand what I mean by that?
Yes, sir. Mhm. Thank you.
Any more questions surrounding that topic? Okay, liabilities. We kind of been talking about this for a while, but liabilities are your utilities. And nowadays, for farms, of course, our gas, fuel expenses have increased. All your accounts that you have to pay, just all of those. Your long-term loan payables, loans, of course, things that exceed 12 months. If it's less than 12 months, typically is listed on the accounts payable. If it's greater than 12 months, we listed on the loans payable. But anybody that you make regular payments to should be either on the accounts payable or loan payables. And again, the difference is the length of time that their contract agreement is. It's greater than 12 months, loans, payable. If it's less than 12 months, it's on the accounts. Of course, people that you owe money to, even your friends and family, a loved one, mother and father who have loaned you money, and they expect you to pay them back. If it's a gift, that's fine. But if it's not a gift and your parents, brothers, your sisters, your neighbors, other farmers, they expect you to pay them back, they should be listed. In the contracts, lease agreements on property, we have an agreement with 2 other farms that we don't use, haven't been over there probably in 12 months. But every month I still have to write a check because I have an agreement to use the land. It should be listed, all your lease agreements that you have to use property or equipment. This is mainly for your company, but who knows, you may be carrying these items in your personal name and it should be on your personal side. If you have an agreement, either company or yourself, it should be listed someplace. Now, of course, accounts payable, again, and we all know this, is the obligation to pay on a short-term basis. I discussed short-term being less than 12 months. Accounts receivable, these are just terms right now, so you understand the terms when you see it. Money owed by you to another entity in exchange for business. I'm sorry, Mr. Wayne. Now, profit and loss statement is very important. You should have a financial statement that summarizes your revenue, your costs and expenses to create that revenue. And typically, again, it's for 12 months for a fiscal year. Some business do it on a quarterly basis, but for sure, on an annual basis, we need to summarize all the revenue, all the costs that created that revenue, so that 1, we can do our taxes, and 2, we know where we are for the last 12 months. And this helps you to go into your budget process to do a budget. If you take, like Mr. Wade said, if you're taking care of your paperwork, taking care of your personal self, this is part of taking care of your business, creating this profit and loss statement. You have to know where you're going. You have to know if you have a net loss or net income. You want to be able to make decisions that create more revenue, control your expenses, reduce your expenses, and the only way you can make these decisions by looking at the profit and loss statement. I used to do mine monthly, but of course I've outgrown that. And I do look at my cash positions monthly, but the other expenses I kind of wait till the end of 12 months, or I shouldn't do it all in the last month so I get my taxes done. I don't know the best way, but it all depends on the number of transactions you have to be concerned with. But every business needs to have a profit and loss statement. If it's nothing but, again, to help you create interest into your tax return. But for sure, you need it when you sit down with a lender and start asking for a loan. Got to have your profit and loss statement. I think two of the individuals that's attending tonight are startup companies. Startup is really the first stage of operation. And startup really is no more than figuring out all the money that you need to build your business, to start your business. Typically, startup is a accumulation of all your expenses except for no revenue. And the reason why it's a startup, you have not earned the first dollar yet. I'm gonna tell my age a little bit, but you can tell what, once upon a time, you can go into a small retail shop and you see dollar bills hanging on the wall behind the cash register normally, and they have a date on it. Typically, that's the first dollar that company earned. That's when the startup period is over with. Once you accept the dollar as revenue, your startup period is over with. So for the first, I've met people who've been up in the startup stage for years. They created a product. They have a dream that they're working on. They pay for a license. They pay for incorporation. They pay the legal expenses to incorporate. They may even move to pay for some space. They may pay for some equipment. They may pay for, of course, itemized list of ingredients that's going into their products or their service. They buy books, they take classes. That space that they contracted for, now they're going to turn on the utilities. They pay utilities. And of course, now you have to buy insurance. All this expense is really classified as startup. It's not expense yet. Again, it's not expense until you make that first dollar. Once you take that first dollar as earnings, the business is open, startup period is open. Questions? And you may ask yourself, why is this important?
Oh, we have one question, Mr. John.
Yes.
Dr. Nicole?
Yes. So you made a good point here, and I just wanted to ask. So I have sold a couple of my sources to my colleagues and folks in my institution. Does that mean I'm out of the startup phase? Because it's still very small, but I have made some money from that. So what would I categorize that as?
Well, that's kind of between you and your accountant at this point. If you're using me as your accountant, I would say that that's contribution for people who are just testing out your products and services.
Okay.
And I would keep you in the startup phase since you're not generating any real revenue per month to speak of. But you are receiving a few dollars. You have to be careful of the activity. When you get outside of your friends and family and it's regular money coming in, and then we're gonna have a hard time with internal revenue because they'd be able to look at, that's another thing, you're running all your money through one bank account for your company. So don't think that, well, I can take all this money and say otherwise. Internal revenue will look at your bank account and see that you've been generating revenue for the last year and your startup period ended some time ago.
Okay.
But if it's just a few dollars here and there, while you perfect your product, perfect your service, you're still working on your business plan, you're increasing, you don't have everything in order yet, you basically still in startup.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on startup? You know what, there should be a question out there about startup, and I'm gonna go ahead and present it myself. You know, because business people try to get their taxes as low as legally possible so that the tax man won't eat into their bottom line too much. And all this money that you're spending is not expense. So an astute business person would say, well, do I ever get a chance to write this money off? I can't use it as expense to reduce my revenue down to a taxable revenue. Do I just lose it? The answer is no, you don't lose it. Your startup becomes an asset that ends up on your balance sheet. And I know you guys are not accountants, so try not to lose you. But let's say for the last 3 years, you've been spending money creating product or service that you can bring to market and create a new business. And you done spent $50,000 over the last 3 years. You don't want to lose that $50,000 when it comes to your taxes. So anyway, IRS has a regulation that allow you to write your startup business expenses against, write it off your business startup costs against your new revenue that you generated. And I believe it's still 3 years. You can't write it off all in 1 year, but you can write it off over a period of 3 years. So you don't lose it. It is still a tax write-off. But again, you don't get it all in year 1, year 2, or year 3. You have to, what they call, amortize it over a period of years. Okay? The shareholder equity is when you someone has invested in your company, and now they're interested in what percentage of your company belongs to them. This is kind of outside the scope of our discussion tonight, because you are interested in how can I get a loan capital to build my business. So I'm not going to talk about shareholders' equity unless someone wants to know more about it. That's good. Your income statement, again, provides a summary of all the revenues that the company earned or lose over a specific period of time. And this also impacts your share value, which is important to a lender. Questions? Okay, gross revenue. When a lender asks you for your gross revenue, that's your top revenue before you subtract anything from it. Of course, your net revenue is after you paid all your expenses for the month. But you should know the difference between the two, the gross and the net. And of course, you should have it on the tip of your lips when they ask for your net. Don't make a mistake and give them the gross, or vice versa. Another important figure to lenders is the cost of sales for those of us, or those of you who are creating a product that you want to sell to a consumer. When you sell something for $35, you should have an idea of what it costs you to make that $35 item. That's another figure that you should have at the tip of your tongue. How much cost am I giving away? I was involved with an ice cream store years ago, and I figured out, I knew we were not making any money. It was draining money. Every time I walked into this ice cream shop, I had to leave a personal check to keep the business afloat. It was three partners, and it seemed like all of us were doing the same thing. Every time we walked in the shop, we had to leave some money. So we knew we were losing money. At the time, the ice cream cone, we were selling for $1.35 for a scoop of ice cream. I figured that every time we scooped ice cream up and put it on the cone and gave it to a kid, that it was costing me $1.50. Well, you know, I got out of that business real quick because I could not raise my price up. Competitors around the corner were charging approximately the same thing. But I could not control my cost. My cost was killing me. And again, every time I scooped ice cream, I was losing 20, 30, 40 cents per scoop. Could not avoid it. We tried our best to control the air conditioning, to save on our utilities. We tried our best to negotiate with our supplier to get cheaper ice cream. Could not do it. It did not work. So after some years of being in this business, closed it up. Because again, every time we scooped ice cream, my cost was higher than my revenue. So therefore, it's very important for us to know cost of sale. Charging somebody for a service, charging somebody for a product. Do you know how much it costs you to provide that service or product? Do you think it's important to know that? It's very important. You should know your cost of sale. Question.
Yeah. I know I had a question because when dealing with farmers, that's one thing we struggle with is how do you include all that goes into those expenses into that product? Because it's most of us probably don't even charge us labor, you know, and then from the seed to the compost to the landscape fabric to the shovel that you bought, all those, you know, so then you got $35 greens if you add all your costs in it. But you know, $1.50.
Yeah, farmers got a tough business to manage, and I guess that's why the government over the years have been involved with all kinds of grants and special loans because we need to have food. Farmers are very important to our survival. And if you put all your costs in the picture, you're right. There's nowhere in the world you can get that back when you're charging for those greens or potatoes or onions or mushrooms. But you still want to be able to know some idea what it costs to produce and bring that to market. Because it's still going to help you to be a good decision maker and managing your business. If you're giving it away, you want to know what you're giving away. I knew in that ice cream example that I was giving away 20, 30, 40 cents every time I scooped the ice cream. I knew that. So I can kind of prepare for it. I could accept the idea that I had to constantly put in my family money to keep this business operating, to have found the opportunity to sell it and get rid of it. Knowing the truth helps you make good decisions. It doesn't solve the problem. You're still losing, but at least you know why you're losing and why it's not working. Back to the farmer example. It takes a lot of time to do what they call cost accounting. Farmers typically don't have CPA firm on staff, on payroll. They're doing all this by themselves. But you have to find somebody, a young person around you, a niece, nephew, son, daughter, wife, husband, somebody to do the books for you, somebody to control all the disbursement and recognize and compare it against all the revenue that's coming in and try to come up with some semblance of a cost reimbursement accounting system. You're right, that shovel that you had to, well, I think you and I were talking, Micah, about my chainsaw that I took to market to have repaired.
Yeah.
And it told me the chainsaws were no good and I had to buy a new saw. Well, that's about the third or fourth chainsaw I purchased in 2 years. Even John Armstrong, the accountant, have not put that in my cost picture of what these grapes costed me to produce. But I should. I should put in that instead of being able to use a chainsaw for 3 years, I have to expend it in a few months because it broke down and I can't use it. I have to either throw it away or use it for parts, but still that cost that I spent, and then of course the new chainsaw to replace it have to be put someplace, and I have to be able to manage my costs. Different people go to market and come back, lose the receipt. You don't know how much fuel you spending, seeds, your fertilizer, weed killer, of course, labor. You have to find some way to track it. You have to teach people around you, bring you the receipts. I had a barbershop years ago when I showed up annually to collect his documents to do his taxes. He would give me a grocery bag of receipts, grocery bags of receipts, just thrown in a bag. Then I had to go and play cards by stacking all the receipts and like all the gasoline receipts in the stack and all the razors in the stack, all these utilities in different stacks, and then tally it up in order to do taxes. I was a young accountant then, and I wanted the account. I was learning how to manage different companies. I went on and did it for a few $100s, but nobody's going to do that nowadays. You won't find anybody that's going to actually take all your receipts, put them in order, tally them up, and give you a report. You have to find somebody close to you to help you manage the cost of sales, the cost of those greens, those potatoes. And then, of course, the indirect, the mortgage for the land, the insurance for all the equipment, all your risks that you take in. All of that had to be accounted for and spread out to that bag of potatoes that you just sold on the back of your ground.
Yeah.
So it's really a tough business being a farmer. Of course, you got to be price competitive. So fine, Michael, you know the price of your product, and then you're ready to go to market and sell. You have $5 cost in each of the potatoes that you have spread out on the table. But the people who show up behind you at another table and they're charging $1 for the potatoes. So what you gonna do? You're not gonna sell your potatoes that day? No, you're gonna sell it for the dollar, move your product,
Take the loss.
and take the loss.
Mhm.
And it goes on and on and on and on. And that's why we need to be able to find good lenders who help us finance our operation. And despite that, we don't have the greatest paperwork and the trail of costs and revenue that we should have. Now, some of this is guesswork at the end of the year because you know you paid for the insurance, you know you paid your note on your property, definitely paid for that $50,000 tractor that we purchased. But we don't want them to come and foreclose on that. I think the word is repo. We don't want them to come take the tractor. So all of the expenses, we have it hopefully in a checking account that we at least go back and revisit our disbursements and get a good tax write-off. But again, we're not able to catch all of our costs. So therefore, we don't have a good cost of sales figure. And this is kind of what we're talking about right now, the gross margin, the gross profit, the amount of revenue a company has when you subtract the cost of sales from the net revenue. You really got to have a good accounting system and a relationship with a good accounting firm to help you come up with cost of sales minus your net revenue to give you your margin. Because again, when you're in business, other than being in the farming business, you need to know what that gross margin is. You need to know what your operating expenses are. The banker asks you, okay, fine, you're sitting in front of me and Mr. Hammond, Mr. Way asks you, how much does it cost you to run your business last year? You should not stammer. You should not look down at the ground. You should know what your operating expenses are. How much did it cost you to run your operation last year? We should know that. But the only way we're going to know that is if we keep good books, especially if they ask you, go ahead. Especially if you ask you, how much did it cost you in February for your utilities versus in the summertime when the heat is out there for your utilities? Because that's going to be a different price for each month. We should be intimate with our operation. We should know. All way you can know is keep good books. Or have a young accountant around me on staff. Yes. This is just in time here, okay? These numbers are so confusing. Don't worry, ma'am, I can help you. That's the accountant. Got to have an accountant around. I've been doing this, you gave me 40 years, I accept that. It's probably a little bit more than 40. But I've never been unemployed. For the whole 40 years, I've been gainfully employed because somebody always need my service. And Paul, the accountant, said, oh my God, parentheses. What does that mean? That's negative. That means you're losing money. Of course, here's Michael say, oh no, I didn't know I was losing money. Oh, so, and see, we have not even talked about depreciation, even though, Michael, you got me talking about that a little bit when we were talking about indirects.
Yeah.
Because you want your operation, your revenue to even cover your depreciation. So the tractor that cost me $50,000, it may last, I said 10 years for easy math. That means $5,000 a year I should be able to write off against depreciation. reduce my taxable income. Now, what farmer worrying about his taxable income and worrying about getting depreciation right? You gotta have an accountant around you someplace, or a person who like numbers and understand the IRS rate.
Mr. John, as you mentioned about taxes, and you mentioned it earlier, when we file our Schedule F and do our taxes, we generally try to list as many deductions as possible to reduce the amount of taxes we owe. How advantageous is that when you're trying to actually secure capital? Because if you're showing negative $2,000 in revenue, how does that appeal to someone that you're loaning money or trying to acquire money from?
Michael, you're asking all the tough questions tonight. But you're right.
Michael, the way I look at it, I'm looking more at cash flow from the narrative. How does your business create cash flow? And then two, I'm looking for the bank statements. How does your money come in? How can I structure the deal based on the way your money comes in? So I'm more or less interested in the cash flow, not necessarily about the way you structure depreciation or showing a loss, because I can add those things back in. Most good lenders will understand, if they understand how to look at the financials. They know what you're doing on the taxes. They should be just looking at the bottom line saying, oh, well, you didn't make any money. Well, that's not the way you look at it. Does that answer the question?
It does answer the question. And I've noticed.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Were you saying something? Somebody saying something?
I don't eat toasted cupcakes. It might chill under the seat. It might be under the seat.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and mute her. I've had that experience of going to banks, and depending on the banker and the banking system, many bankers I've come across don't necessarily understand the agricultural dynamics. They're looking at the bottom line, and then they give it to a underwriter to take a look at, and it usually doesn't pass the sniff test with the underwriter. But I think more, small institutions, credit unions or private lenders have a better understanding of how to lend money. And the USDA has an understanding of this with the FSA, where they won't finance you for a loan until you've been rejected 3 times from a traditional lender.
Right.
Expecting you to be rejected because of how our cash flow and our businesses operate. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think you coming from a private equity or private capital company, you have a better understanding of who you're dealing with and having more relationship with the person you're looking to than just seeing the numbers.
Yeah.
Yes, if you get a chance, research some of your local regional banks, because like in Georgia, in Macon, Georgia, SunTrust Bank, who's now Truist, they have a specific division that does only the chicken houses. I mean, that was in Gainesville or Hall County, Gainesville up around Georgia, around Atlanta area, above where the doctor is, above Athens. That's a huge chicken area. Well, there's banks that have divisions that's such a profit center for them that they specialize just in whatever market you're doing. There's typically somebody in your state that would be a regional bank that would specialize in that.
Thank you.
Yes. But it is a tug of war between the two positions, tax losses versus a set of numbers that the banker will be impressed with. Mr. Wade does not use underwriting to over his deals. he can look at the numbers and see what you're making. He can look at your bank statement and see what kind of revenue that you're generating, and look at your major expenses and see that either you're running a net that you can pay him back or not, or like he said, you structure around a limited deal on just chicken houses, maybe, land loans. He's just making sure that you got enough cash to pay him at a certain point, and that's fine, and that's his value in the marketplace. The same thing with the lenders that I deal with when I flip houses. They're only interested, John, what are you going to spend to get this house ready for market? How much can you sell it for? How much will you have invested in it at that time? What is the net? And is that net good enough to take care of me? And if I can prove those figures to him, he'll enter the deal with me. So he's a partner in the business with you to help you out.
Well, it's like a real estate deal they used to do years ago in some of the Caribbean islands. Let's say you have a hotel that 90% of their business comes from 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, I would structure the loan that I would take 90% of the payment for the year's payments in those 3 months.
Yeah.
So I just structure the deal around how can it service the debt. And that's why I like dealing with private people, private money, because if I can get two people that enter into a mutually agreeable understanding, even if it's me or somebody else, then I can structure that to where everybody's happy and they understand. If we need to go back in and change the terms, when you use private money and private individuals, then that gives you the authority to do that. And
Yes.
that's the reason I like to use that, because if we have a storm that comes through and the debt's supposed to be due, but we know that they're filing a claim for FEMA or something, or through some, government agency that's going to come in and take care of some of that debt because there was a loss greater than what you had to do with, then I could structure it to where I would wait on that money. Pay when paid is what we call it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot, I think of it totally different than a lot of other people that you might deal with.
Thank you for that. Income from operations is what we're currently talking about, Michael, because this is what the tax authorities are going to be looking for. Your gross profit, minus your operating expenses, that's what you're going to pay taxes on. Now, lenders can look at the gross profit and see how much money you're generating. If a lender is working with you, then he look at the expenses and see what's left over again for payment of the new loan that you are considering undertaking. And that's all they're interested in. They're not interested in, like Mr. Wade said, he'll structure payments are due during the 3 months when you're in business, or pay when you get paid out of a situation. His underwriting is totally different from the banks, credit unions. But still, you must have a reasonably good set of books in order to satisfy internal revenue. Because again, the tax man is your partner. If he, whether you know him or not, that's your partner. I always say that I paid close to 50% in taxes, and he's the biggest and strongest partner that I have is the tax man. And especially if you're in a business where your gross profits and your operation expenses can be tracked easily. Do we have any more time left? Or we push up against the end, Mike.
Yeah, you can go for a little longer.
Okay. These are the different parts of a financial statement that most banks and lenders would like to see. Must have a strong balance sheet. And a balance sheet is no more than a list of all your assets, a list of all your liabilities, and you net it. And of course, you want to make sure that the balance sheet should be a positive figure on the bottom line. It's called your net worth. Just because you make $1 million a year, that don't mean that you're worth $1 million. If you spend $900,000 to earn that million, you only worth you only net $100,000 for the year. That's your balance sheet, $100,000, not the million. If you earn $1 million, you spend $1,002,002 to earn that million, you got a loss, even though it's $1 million. So again, you want to control the balance sheet, control the income statement by coming up with a good cash flow statement. Because again, banks love cash flow statement. Where's the cash coming from, and where does it flow to? Where does it go? So if you earn $10,000 a month, how much of that is for utilities, insurance, for the raw materials to produce the products? Bean counters like myself, this is what we like to see. This is what banks like to see. This is just formulas, and I'm not going to spend any time on this. It doesn't help any of us out to create a statement so we can take to the bank, take to a lender, and receive capital. Now, for me, all of these lenders, including the SBA and these other government agencies, it's still the same thing. They want to see your revenue, want to see your expenses, they want to see your net. And like you said, Michael, they usually want to see the turn down letters from 3 banks before they get involved with you. And that's where SBA is. They'll help you, but after you've been turned down 2 or 3 times by a banker, then they'll look at you, how they can help.
Armstrong,
Yes, sir.
one thing that I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of, like in the state of Georgia, the University of Georgia has the small business development, and they do courses typically for free for either startups or small businesses. They have financial models typically for industries. And so it's not like you have to go back in and understand a lot of this. It's more of a plug and play, and they get paid to help you understand how to do your financials. And then that way you can get with your own financial advisor, your accountants, and you can, because they help you get your documents or your financials ready for when you do go try to get a loan, your financial paperwork are all in order. And so that should be a free or a very nominal fee for every state should have that.
Yes,
and
you're right.
And so I know that they have good courses. I know they have courses other than just the financial modeling side.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that that was available, and then they can get the expertise from a CPA or something to help them for their particular circumstance.
That's correct. And SBA have a special unit that I think you're alluding to, a group of retired financial people, and that's what they do. They help all comers to bring your documents in, and they will assist you. and they're located in each community. You go to the SBA website and seek them out. We have one here in the Northern Virginia area that I used to use in Springfield. And again, you're right, you go in for free.
Yeah,
They
because
were-
the SBA will have one in the SBDC, which is a Small Business Development Center. And so those two might have an overlap, but make sure when you do your research to try to get the information from them, because that way you're not having to start from scratch. They already have almost like a plug and play.
Yeah, that's true. Well, any questions before we close out? I can go all night talking about finance. Any questions that we didn't bring up?
Anyone have any questions or comments, concerns, thoughts? Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. I think there's a question there.
You say it is a question on board?
But I could have misheard something. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Armstrong, and thank you as well, Mr. Ray, for sharing some different ideas and approaches of how to get capital or acquire capital. I think this is a great foundation to get started with.
Yeah.
Both of you all stated getting yourself together first.
Mr. Ray, thank you very much. You had some very insightful information from another perspective, but it's a great perspective because private money is important in this marketplace also. It's a place that we can go for what I consider temporary, fast project help. His help is probably not good for 3, 4, 5 years financing like some of us might need. But if you have a project that needs to have seed money to get it to market, and within 2 or 3 months or 6 months, he's not a bad source to consider of someone like him. And they exist also.
Thank you,
Michael.
everybody, for joining us this evening. Please take a moment to fill out the survey in the chat, and we'll entertain or open ourselves up again for some more questions or comments if anyone wants to share. If not, have a great evening and have a great holiday as well.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Survey.